Here we are for the hunt for Esmeralda Gullan and the history, and we're just coming away from Piccadilly Circus, Shaftesbury Avenue, which is just up in that direction, and we're right by here, the Ritz, of course, the famous Ritz on Arlington Street. But we want to be going over here. We want to look over here, because over here, I just literally, I saw the Ritz and I thought, you reckon I'm near any one of Esmeralda Gullan's places? Because we must be getting close now. This is where I was heading towards, heading away. I know the first one was in Piccadilly, the Dover Street Buttery, so I put in Dover Street, and it turns out I was standing right next to Dover Street. Here it is. This is it, apparently. I think so, anyway. Up there, if you can see, it says Dover Street W1. Here, Esmeralda Gullan, otherwise known as Esmeralda Noel Smith, opened up her first buttery after she finished renovating flats and houses in London that had been damaged or let run down after the war. And she would open her first running business, her first enterprise on this street, which I find very interesting. Here we are, the Clarence sells hearty pies. Sweet Caroline playing in the distance. So, I'm not sure which buildings they were, but the Dover Buttery was here somewhere. And now it makes a lot of sense why it was such an upper class place. It's right across from the Ritz. So they would have had these extremely rich guys coming along and going over to the Buttery after they've checked into the Ritz and whatnot. And it is insane. It is insane. I'm here. Somewhere here. So this is number 10 Dover Street. I'm just gonna keep moving along. I'm gonna find out later where it is, where it was officially. But this was her first buttery. This was the road where Esmeralda Noel Smith, originally called Esmeralda Gullan, Mary Esmeralda Gullan in actual fact, but she went by the name Esmeralda, which was her Chilean auntie's name. This is where she set up her first business. This is where it all started for her. This is where it was the road. She started on the road to her own death. I believe that she was murdered. I believe it was to take over Esmeralda's barn, the prized possession that she had. She also owned another buttery. Can't remember what street that's on. And over in Wilton Place, she opened up the Motrose Club just before Esmeralda's barn. Esmeralda's barn was built where the Torch Theatre used to be, I believe. I don't know if they've renamed it and done that. But this is the road. This is the road where... this is the road. Much changed now. I'm sure it's changed a lot. This is the road where Esmeralda Gullan set up her first enterprise. And I've done so much research, and to be here is like special for me. I really mean that. I actually get excited. And most people would never use. She was almost written out of history. Her achievements, what she did, who she was almost written out of history. I've read books such as the life and times of people who were involved in the Profumo Affair, like Stephen Ward's Scapegoat, and the Novotny Files, and they rewrite the history of Esmeralda Gullan. They actually rewrite her out of history almost completely. So this is number 40. Sorry, gents. This is number 40 there. I'm wondering which one is, guys. I'll put it on the screen. 39 only. It goes 40, 39, 38. That's rare, isn't it? Odds and evens, not separated. This is the road where she first set up her buttery. Now he has homeless people sleeping in the doorway, of course, because that's nearly everywhere in London now, has homeless people sleeping in the doorway. There's lots of homeless people here. They keep just shoving in immigrants from wars that are created by the Union Jack-flying British elite establishment. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhere like here. We see this building called El Norte now. It feels like we're entering up into the more upper class area of upper class part of Dover Street in general. So over here is number 35. I don't know what building this is. It's covered in scaffolding. A boutique retail units. Bagatelle 34. This beautiful building here is again another Georgian looking building. This looks like it's a bit later though. To be honest, it looks like it's been painted over a fair few times. No stones. Don't look like, I don't know. I think the bottom part of that has been renovated personally. And then you got monks. But there's somewhere down here, Esmeralda Gullan started her first business. She started it and she was taking on the establishment. She was just a woman in the 50s. This wasn't something that you didn't have this same sort of like idea of powerful women. You still had this idea that women had to stay in their places and accept where they were in life. 25, 26, etc. Really want to know which number. I really should try and work out which number Dover Street was her Buttery, but somewhere down here, and I fucking love that I'm here. Now I'm gonna go and walk past the Ritz, and I'm gonna walk past Buckingham Palace a little bit. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, to be honest, so I probably should be going home, back to the hotel and having a sleep. But now I am here, I can smell the ghost of Esmeralda Gullan. I know she's here. And this was a really important place for her. Really important. Like I say, 1 or 2 Butteries. The next place she set up was the Montrose. That was on Wilton Place. I think that's the next place I'll be getting to. The next destination for me here. And things have changed now, of course. But this used to be, I'm pretty positive this was much more lively back then. Like I said about London, London's gone very quiet from what I remembered it myself. And I get a feeling you go back every 10 years and it gets louder and louder, you know, it gets more busy and more busy. Because there was less enterprises, there was less places. And the ones that were open obviously got the most attention. But I'm here on Dover Street and I couldn't be happier. I feel like I'm a little bit like when you write an article that's as in-depth as the Esmeralda Gullan article that I wrote about Esmeralda's barn, you become attached to it. It's like a miniature Graceland. You know, you go to a place where you're just like in awe by the history. And here, I am in awe by the history. I can feel it. I can feel it because I know it. You know, not many people know at all. Well, I can tell you, no one on this street right now knows about the fact that Esmeralda Gullan once opened her Buttery here. And then would open the Montrose, and then would open Esmeralda's barn, and then would be found dead, gassed to death in her flat, lying on a divan next to a young hostess from one of her clubs after a night of dancing in her flat with some other men. And the actual court records shows that the woman who was found next to her had said that they didn't actually go to sleep in the same bed. She had her own bedroom, and Esmeralda said goodnight about 5 o'clock in the morning on the night of her death, or the day of her death, and went back to her own room. Yet when they were found unconscious both of them were on the same divan. That is something that doesn't make any sense. Also, it was said that the gas fire in Esmeralda Gullan's flat had gone out due to blowback, and its gas had filled up the room. But Inspector Dix, his name D-I-X, came to the flat, was the first one to first police officer to show up and investigate, and found the flame still to be lit. Now, I don't know how gas builds up in a room, especially with old single glazed windows, how it builds up in a room when there's a flame burning in there. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe someone, why would they accept that? But then they had a gas board expert come into the court and say, in actual fact, there was a hole in the gas pipe. A little abrasion, I don't know, a cut. But basically, that really conflicted on the stories of what actually happened. God, that fucking taxi needs to have some oil on its wheels. I was squeaking, howling. But there you go. So, Dover Street, right round the corner from the Ritz Hotel. No wonder it was such highbrow establishment was Esmeralda's Dover Street Buttery. No wonder, because it was right around the corner from where all of the rich dicks hang out. Something she did was she entered into the world of the rich, man. She entered into the world of the rich, and I think she paid her price for it, because she was hanging around with people who were really strange, including in the club we're going to now. You've got George Huntington Hartford II, who was there, and he would later be linked up with Ian Fleming and Ivor Bryce and their intelligence stuff in the Bahamas when they were going off to write James Bond. So there's a load of history with that. But they were hanging around a place like the Montrose Club. I'll talk about that in a bit. But we're going to just get a little bit of singing first, because that's what we do. That's what we like.
Hello, mate.
Hey, my man, how's it going? Life's all right. But we're just walking away from Piccadilly Circus, of course. We're on Piccadilly itself, heading down to Hyde Park Corner. So the corner of where you've got the park that's in the back of Buckingham Palace, wherever that's called, to the corner of Hyde Park. So I think that's the southeast corner of Hyde Park. And that's where we want to go. Though most people won't realise why we want to go there. We want to go there to search out a bit of history, because I was just in awe at the Dover Street Buttery. The fact that I was on that road where Esmeralda Gullan had taken her first steps into becoming a proprietor of night spots. I mean, it was complained after her death, the person who was left her money and was running the clubs before Horace Dibben took them over, did actually complain about the fact that they were all called nightclubs. He didn't agree with that. He thought that they were two butteries, a cabaret place and something else. You know, he had lots of reasons why these weren't nightclubs. Nightclubs are for poor people, not for rich people. So we're back. We're crossing over the road by Hyde Park Corner, and we're heading up to two places. The first place we're going to head and we're going to get to is Wilton Place. That's the site of the Torch Theatre, which Esmeralda Gullan bought after the second place we're going to look at. In a sense, it's the third place we're going to look at, because we just looked at the Dover Buttery. There was another Buttery. I've not been able to find out where the other Buttery she was invested in was. I have done my research on it, and it's a really little... It's not like the biggest piece of the puzzle. There's no really need for me to find out. Well, I say that until I find out and then discover that someone else who owned it was just crazy or etc. And it puts all of the pieces of the puzzle together. That's how these sort of things work. You think, oh, that's not going to be important until you look at it, and then you go, no, this is why I have to know every detail. But we are coming away from Piccadilly here. We're walking on the left side of me. Behind this fence is the park that leads to Buckingham Palace, and we're walking up to Hyde Park Corner. And on the other side of Hyde Park Corner, somewhere around there, will be Wilton Place, where the Torch Theatre was, and Esmeralda Gullan would buy that, and would, I believe, that would be, I know I might have said erroneously that the Motrose Club that she was also proprietor of was on Wilton Place. That was actually Two Mews Cottages off Halfkin Street, which is just nearby. It's probably about half a mile away from Wilton Place, where the Torch Theatre was. Now, the reason I think Esmeralda's Band was actually the Torch Theatre as well is because Patsy Morgan Dibben was someone who attempted to rename Esmeralda's Barn back to the Torch Theatre at one point. She didn't get the backing behind that she wanted, and everybody continued to call it Esmeralda's Barn. Some people just got it wrong all the time. Some people called it Esmeralda. Some people even, there's one article where it's called Esmeraldo's, which was one of the first times it was advertised, and so it was advertised with a fucking wrong name, which is crazy. But what we're going to do, we got a drunk guy behind us, it's 1:30 in the morning, let's ignore him a little. What we're going to do is go up and find Halfkin Street and Wilton Place. First, we're going to come across Wilton Place, and I know that the building that used to be the Torch Theatre and then Esmeralda's Barn is no longer there. It's no longer present. So here you go. That leads across to Buckingham Palace somewhere over there. There you're looking down Duke of Wellington Place, yeah. Leads down to Buckingham Palace and that part. At least that's what I think. It's over here. It's where we want to go. And we want to move across the roads over in this direction. And you can see why there were aristocrats, princes, Prince Philip being one of them, and others who ended up frequenting Esmeralda's clubs, because they're right round the corner from Buckingham Palace. You know, the Dover Street Buttery is right round the corner from the Ritz. You know, this is she knew what she was doing. She bought properties where the elite would go, the establishment would go, and that may be her downfall, because those are the places that both gangsters and intelligence services wanted to control the most. And one of the biggest recruits for the intelligence services after the war and during the war, to be honest, were aristocrats. They couldn't trust the normal people to do secret intelligence work. They have their own club already. Why don't you use your own secretive club like you've got with aristocrats and the like? So it's not a surprise that she aimed at aristocrats. She aimed at princes. She aimed at getting these people into her establishments. And it's not a surprise, and that may have led to her death, because those people were as corrupt as they come, and with them, along with them, came the sick people who were manipulating society at the time, the real sickos. Still on Duke of Wellington Place there, and we're about to turn off, and we're about to go and find Wilton Place. So here we go. If we film, I hope we film. It's that way to Belgravia Square, over there, Grosvenor Square. But we are here on Wilton Place. This was formerly the home of the Torch Theatres. Esmeralda Gullan would buy them in 1954, I think it was, and convert them into Esmeralda's barn. After she had converted them into Esmeralda's barn, she was eventually gassed, dead. Horace Dibben would take it over and would put Patsy Morgan Dibben in charge of running it. Patsy Morgan Dibben would go disappearing. And then Billy Hill, local gangster, London gangster, very successful London gangster, never actually, I think he was involved in the Brinks Mat robbery and stuff, never actually got prosecuted for anything he did. Amazing. Ended up, I think he ran off with his wife to Mallorca and lived out his days there, died of old age. But it was here on Wilton Place, and I think it is this site by here, what is now hotel. I'd heard that it was a hotel, so it's not a surprise to see a hotel here, of course, when you hear about these things. It was here, on Wilton Place, Esmeralda's barn was opened. An extremely interesting intrigue. After Patsy Morgan Dibben went missing, Horace Dibben handed it over to Billy Hill. Billy Hill apparently had another local gangster running it called, his name was apparently Ronnie Dice. I don't know if that's true. Ronnie Dice was another gangster who would be running it alongside the eventual, he would get pushed out by certain gangsters, and eventually the Kray twins would take it over. And I'm nearly 100% positive that it's around here. It used to be here, just by there. I think this is a site. If it's not, then it's just across the road, and it's one of these buildings here. But these buildings still look like original late Georgian era buildings. They look like they haven't been brought down and made anew. I reckon these look new. I don't reckon these look new. I reckon these look like period properties. And yeah, I think this is it. The Berkeley got put up, and so it was right by there. Ronnie and Reggie Kray eventually were running a casino from Esmeralda's barn, right by here. It would be run by Stefan DeFay. He used to be a presenter on BBC Cafe Continental, which was a weird show in itself. But this here is the second time tonight where I felt this feeling like I'm standing in a place so special for me, another little mini Graceland. And this used to be something where some of the most amazing, everybody from Stephen Ward, Lord Astor, Prince Philip when he was younger, Lord Mountbatten, they would all congregate in Esmeralda's barn at times. It became also a central hub for intelligence agents, a place where they could mingle. And of course, a lot of the nightclubs around that period were used in that way for drops. So people would come, and it would be easier for Soviet-leaning people to drop information to other Soviet-leaning people hidden away in the darkness of a nightclub behind closed doors. Look at this. We're here in Wilton Place. This is so massively important to the articles I've been writing of late, and I feel the ghost of Esmeralda Gullan. Now let's go and check out where the Motrose Club is. Grosvenor Crescent, including Belgravia Square, including 49 Belgravia Square, which must be a big property here. Look at this. This is a very upper market part of London. And these guys ain't going to like the fact I'm crossing over now. But we're here and outside the statue of Sir Robert Grosvenor, the first Marquis of Westminster. Again, is that post-glorious revolution? Another one of the many titles given to these people. We're on Wilton Crescent. We're right round the corner from what was the Torch Theatre. We're right round the place from what got turned into Esmeralda's barn eventually. And this place is a place, I cannot tell you how much history. From the moment Esmeralda opened it up, these rundown theatres that were about to close up, she opened them up as Esmeralda's barn. And instantly she got Pietro Annigoni, who was the person who she would paint 2 portraits of the Queen. But he was painting a portrait of the Queen, I think, around that time. Very famous one. And he would actually officially be brought in originally to design the interior of Esmeralda's barn, to actually do murals on the wall with his apprentice, who's another famous artist, who I can't recall his name right now. Extremely famous artist, though, of the past, if you're into that sort of stuff. I think he might have also painted a portrait of the royal family too. But Annigoni spent a lot of his time. He had actually met Esmeralda in Italy, and first he wanted to paint a portrait of her, Esmeralda Gullan. She was well known for being a beauty, beautiful woman, really strange mix as well, like a little bit Welsh, a little bit Chilean, very much Irish. So she was a big mix, very pretty lady. But he had originally wanted to paint a portrait of her, and instead she convinced him to do a mural at her opening of Esmeralda's barn. And after she died, then it was taken over, I think it was by Billy Hill, the gangster, eventually. Well, Horace Dibben took it over first with Patsy Morgan Dibben, of course. And then he handed it over to Billy Hill, and Horace Dibben went over to open up the Black Sheep. Is this it? Are we on Wilton? Yes, we are. This is Wilton Place. Here we are. We're on it. And this is exciting for me as well. This is a place I wasn't expecting it to be this quiet. I was expecting it to still be some form of club. I had heard that all of those things had been rebuilt into houses, and I think it would have been down this way. And look, there are massive buildings here, really big buildings here. But I think it's down here. I think it's down here. So that's Wilton Place. I'm looking down Wilton Place now. As you see, there's a sign up on the wall, if you can see it, saying Wilton Place. That's the site of Esmeralda's barn down there. A place of great interest. And what we're now on the hunt for is Halkin Street. I might have mispronounced it and called it Halfkin and stuff at times, and Halfkin Street, but it's Halkin Street. And this was the site of the Motrose Clubs. The Motrose Club. I say Motrose Clubs automatically because it was actually 2 Mews cottages. And in my mind, because I know that 2 Mews cottages were built into one club, I automatically call it the Motrose Clubs. Something in my brain I can't get rid of. So it's not far, and I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know it yet. But I'm sure the street sign will tell us when we get there. So here we go. I keep saying Halkin Street. This Halkin Place. Sometimes say Halfkin, sometimes say Halfkin, all of this. But we're looking for Halkin Place. Okay, Halkin Place, which is just a short way from where Esmeralda's barn was, had 2 Mews cottages on it, which Esmeralda Gullan turned into the Motrose Club. And the Motrose Club is an extremely affluent Club is a place where really rich people, and here we are, here it is, Halkin Place, 2 Mews cottages off Halkin Place. So he's off Halkin Place. So we've got to be very close to where the Motrose Club was. And can you imagine? Look how quiet it is round here. Look how quiet it is. Such a quiet area. So weird that you would have the Motrose Club in such a quiet area. And so, look, Belgrave Mews West. 2 Mews cottages off Halkin Place. So I would suppose that there is the Motrose Club. Ay. Again, filling me up with joy. Here we are. Up here is West Halkin Street. This is Halkin Place. There you go, Halkin Place. And it was said multiple times that Esmeralda Gullan set up the Motrose Club, her second place that she was proprietor, by renovating 2 Mews cottages off Halkin Place. And here I'm on Halkin Place, and I was thinking, am I going to find any Mews cottages? And I found Belgrave Mews West, leading to Chesham Mews. So was the Motrose Club down here in some Mews cottages? No, I think the Motrose Club was here. I think maybe it's one of these places here. It's probably one of the smaller places rather than what is now the Star Tavern. It's actually got signs on it saying Grosvenor Private Mews, parking for residents only, but it doesn't say I'm not allowed here, and there's no gate, which gives me implied right of access under British law, even late at night. But it's here on Halkin Place where Esmeralda Gullan set up the Motrose Club. She took 2 Mews cottages here, set up the Motrose Club. And the Motrose Club was for the elite. Some of the biggest people, again, Pietro Annigoni would hang out there, and others, including George Huntington Hartford II, who was very close eventually with Ian Fleming and Ivor Bryce as they were writing and creating James Bond with a couple of others. The actual movies, Ian Fleming originally introduced James Bond in 1952 into one of his books, but the movies only came later, and then he had to write loads more. Somewhere here, though, I nearly dropped a camera there. Somewhere here, in one of these Mews cottages, or 2 of these Mews cottages, was the Motrose Club. And it was a place where at one point I read an article, and I've noted it down in one of my pieces, where George Huntington Hartford II's wife was actually her and Pietro Annigoni, the man who painted 2 portraits of Queen Elizabeth. They were both apparently master forgers and really good at faking other people's signatures. So George Huntington Hartford II did his signature, and then Annigoni and Huntington Hartford's wife both tried to copy it, and no one around the dinner table at the Motrose Club could work out which one was, look, the Austrian embassy, which one was the real signature. And that's one of the stories from the Motrose Club. And I was sitting around that table, included Esmeralda Gullan and others. Very rich people. This is right on the edge of Knightsbridge. This is right by where, some of the richest people live. And Esmeralda Gullan knew where she wanted her properties. But was this the end of her? Was this the reason? She put one of her properties, Dover Street, Buttery, right next to the Ritz, and she put Wilton Place and Wilton Street and Halkin Place properties right in amongst where all of the rich people lived. Now, was that the death of her? I think it was. I think it's the reason ultimately she got gassed. I think she knew too much. I think there was something going on as well that I don't know about, that led to her dying on a laying dying on a divan next to one of her hostesses from the Motrose Club. So they left the night of her death. Her and the hostess had left the Motrose Club with two men, unidentified, and they had gone back to her flat and they had started dancing and enjoying themselves. And the girl went to bed, the hostess went to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock, Esmeralda Gullan came into her room and said, I'm going to bed soon, and went into the next room, her own bedroom, and went to sleep. And then they were found, both gassed, lying on the same divan in the same room. Suspicious? Yes. Loads of contradictions, which I've talked about earlier. But here we are. Somewhere here is part of that hidden history, and I love it. I love it. So this has been a really important little trek through London for me. But I'm going to end it here. I'm going to go back up this way. I'm going to get in a taxi. And I'm going to have a taxi take me back to a hotel. I'm going to drink a cup of tea.
Like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.